The first century church should have died. It should have disappeared within a single generation. That is, if all the stuff we have in our churches that we claim is absolutely essential to having a successful church is in fact essential. Because as best I can tell, that first century church didn't have any of that stuff. And yet they survived. No, let's see, that's not right. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Without all the stuff that we say is so essential to having a successful church, they thrived. Surely there's some lessons to be learned here. So, what is all this essential stuff that a church needs? What are those things that we so commonly today think of as being required for a church to be successful? The list is really pretty long, so let's quickly make a list of some of the more common things that almost every brand of church relies on. We'll just make a quick list. A church building. A quality pastor slash preacher slash minister, whatever your preferred name for it is. Some governance system to make sure things stay in control. Money. Can't have a church without money to pay for these things that we need to make a successful church. A youth program, regardless of how formal or informal. Pretty much every church makes this a priority to one degree or another. And finally, a quality worship service. Can't expect people to be an active, participative member of the church if you don't at least offer them a quality worship service once a week. Now, we're not going to do a deep dive on each one of these in this short video, but we'll make a brief comment about each one of these. Church buildings. We know the New Testament speaks of the early church meeting in homes several times. And nowhere can you find biblical instruction to use their money to build a place to meet. It's not there. A great preacher or pastor. Did you realize that 1 Corinthians 14 speaks of the assembly of the saints as a time when several people prophesy and others are instructed to actively test what's been shared? This direct biblical instruction is not aligned at all with the model of one person getting up and dominating the assembly week after week after week. Some governance structure to keep things organized and under control. The Bible speaks of elders and deacons. It doesn't speak of archbishops or senior pastors or synods or convention or executive committees or voting and non-voting members. It doesn't speak of any of that stuff. Money. Jesus spoke about money as often as almost any other topic. You know what he said? He said it is the root of all kinds of evil. He said to use it to feed the hungry, clothe the homeless, share with those in need. He never said to build big cathedrals, spend money on fancy robes for the clergy or the choir, spend money on big fancy organs and stained glass windows. You really have to wonder if Jesus would approve of the way we're using our money. Youth program. Look, Jesus loved the children. When some of his disciples wanted to send the children away, Jesus rebuked them and said, "Bring the children to him." He said that anyone who harms a child should have a millstone tied to their neck and be thrown in the lake. The Bible says moms and dads should raise their children in the way of the Lord. It doesn't say we should have a church youth program to delegate that responsibility to. Finally, a quality worship service. Did you know that the phrase worship service doesn't occur a single time in the Bible? The early church gathered to share understanding of God's plan for their lives, to edify one another, to stand strong in their faith in this sinful world, and to share a meal together. The very idea of a worship service would have been completely foreign to them. So, without all these things we just talked about that we consider so important, that we spend so much time, energy, and money on, how in the world did the early church survive? Most of us can't even conceive of a church today that doesn't have these things. We're so accustomed to them that we can't imagine a church being successful without them. Now that's kind of odd, isn't it? The church in America, with all these things that we say are so important, is actually shrinking. Church membership has been getting consistently less and less for over 60 years now. And the research shows that many who do attend don't even have a solid understanding of their core religious beliefs. It's kind of like we've made it so easy and so convenient that they're just going through the motions, not seriously or sincerely invested, just playing the game. Contrast that to the first century church. Without all these things that we think are so critical, the church grew and spread and changed the culture and society around it. How did that happen? Without all this critical stuff, how did that happen? You know, to be honest, I really don't think it's all that hard to understand. In John 14:6, Jesus is quoted saying, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And in Luke 9:23, he says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." Could it be that we've become confused? Could it be that we've become selfish, lazy, and comfortable, and have decided to substitute following Jesus with going to church? And not only that, we've even made going to church really easy. A nice air-conditioned building with comfortable seats and pretty stained glass windows, and someone else that put in the time to present a sermon out of the Bible. Although in a lot of churches these days, there's more and more self-help, feel-good stuff than there is actual teaching from the Bible. Oh, and I can send my kids to Bible class or children's worship so I can relax and get more out of my time there. I don't have to personally worry about staying true to the gospel. That's what the church governance is for, right? I can leave that to them. No need to spend my energy on that. They'll take care of that. Do you see what's happened? We've taken this focus on Jesus and we've replaced it with all this church stuff. And over time, all this church stuff has become even more and more convenient and easy. I don't even have to get up and prepare my own coffee anymore. They'll have plenty of that for me at the church coffee bar. They know just the blend that I like. What a deal. Feel free to disagree with me, but I'm convinced that the early church grew in spite of not having all this stuff that we now consider essential. Largely because they didn't have all that stuff to distract them from the one thing that really does matter: Jesus. Now, if you think that's crazy, let's finish today by looking at something Paul said. He can certainly make the point far better than I can. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul tells his fellow saints in Corinth, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom, for I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." You see, Paul was reiterating to them that it's not about all our stuff, all our add-ons and clever church stuff. It's about one thing and one thing only: Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Maybe the early church not only survived, but thrived because it had its focus on the one thing that mattered. And maybe the modern church of today has lost its focus, thinking that all these things are so important, instead of the one thing that really is important. Let's leave it there for today. Thanks for listening. God bless you on your journey.